this might very well be a male character that Colleen Hoover writes that I don't entirely hate. And then he opens his mouth.
Kill me now.
I think that was supposed to be funny. Maybe the humor was the friends we made along the way. This was sickening.
Hey guys, today I'm doing something that I told myself I'd never do again, which is picking up a Colleen Hoover book. I don't know why I'm doing it. There's only 2 reasons for it. Number 1, I'm always looking for more reasons to criticize her. And number 2, for your own personal entertainment. So I'm going to be picking up Colleen Hoover's November 9th. I have actually only heard good things about this book. As in, like, wait, let me rephrase. TikTok has only told me good things about this book. Not I have heard good things about this book, which in the way that it is hyped and by the type of people it's hyped by, I know it's going to be something that I do not enjoy. However, I'm not going to go into it with a completely biased mindset. I am going to go into it with the knowledge that she does romanticize abuse, so I'm not going to try and deny that or pretend like she doesn't do that as an author. However, I'm going to go into it with, like, you know, in terms of literary criticism, I'm going to go into it with an open mind and hopefully not want to kill myself by the end of it. I'm just going to give you a brief synopsis before I get into reading it. Fallon meets Ben, an aspiring novelist, the day of her scheduled cross-country move. Their untimely attraction leads them to spend Fallon's last day in LA together, and her eventful life becomes the creative inspiration Ben has always sought for his novel. Over time, and amidst the various relationships and tribulations of their own separate lives, they continue to meet on the same day every year, until one day Fallon becomes unsure if Ben has been telling her the truth or fabricating a perfect reality for the sake of the ultimate plot twist. Can Ben's relationship with Fallon and simultaneously his novel be considered a love story if it ends in heartbreak? So essentially, I don't even know how to summarize it. Let's just read the book. Actually, one more thing before we get into reading. I loved every page and breathed in every word. A review written by Anna Todd, author of the After series. I think we know where this book is going to go.
Okay, so I'm officially around halfway through the book, and I just don't like it. It's just not good. Look, it's not the worst of Colleen Hoover's books, but that's not necessarily a compliment because, like, they're not good. It's just not the worst, but I still don't like it. So as mentioned in the brief synopsis I gave, is that Fallon and Ben meet when he pretends to be her boyfriend to interrupt her argument with her textbook 101 celebrity narcissist father, who's basically just going on her, telling her she will never succeed, she will not get what it is that she wants because she has the wrong hopes and she needs to give up on her dream. For context, Fallon was burnt really, really badly in his house and he had forgotten that she was there, so he didn't save her in time, and she has just these painful, agonizing scars all across the left side of her body, which she is very, very evidently cripplingly insecure about. And her dad just doesn't necessarily show any sympathy for that. So Ben jumps in to be the savior of the day. And she just goes with it. She just is like, yeah, this is my boyfriend, la 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 la. So the argument ends, her dad leaves, and Fallon ends up spending the day with Ben. Now, in this first chapter, from Fallon's perspective, I was hopeful. I was like, oh my God, this might very well be a male character that Colleen Hoover writes that I don't entirely hate. And then he opens his mouth. We get to his POV and I just despise everything about who he is. Let me just read you some things that he said. So on page 24, which is literally just the second page of his POV, his first page is 23. That's when he comes in his POV. 24 is his page. And he says, I seem to have a one-track mind, and that track leads straight to the 2 things I shouldn't even be thinking about right now. Her boobs. Both of them. Ew! I think that was supposed to be funny. Maybe the humor was the friends we made along the way. And then, page 34, still his first POV, still his first chapter. This is when we should be falling in love with the male love interest. He again says, the first time you walked past me, before I interrupted your lunch date with your father, I stared at your ass the whole time you were stomping away.
This guy stinks!
Because what other way to make a woman feel beautiful than to speak about her tits and her ass? So they spend the day together, and just lo and behold, honestly, like, God, you are great, because in one day, in 6 hours that she spent with this strange man who just talks about her body, 2 years worth of crippling insecurities just sort of slowly disappear. He just makes her feel so good about herself and so beautiful, because that's what men are for, right? Women are just these weak, cripplingly insecure people, and men are their saviors. Men are here to make us feel better, right? Anyway, so Fallon basically is like, oh my God, I'm really into this guy and I want to be with him, but I'm moving to New York for this job that her father was getting onto her about. And they are both like, oh my God, no, I want to see you, I want to see you, I want to see you. But Fallon's mum told her that a woman is not like emotionally mature and developed until she's until she's 23, so she shouldn't date until she's 23. And Fallon is 18 years old, so is Ben. So she agrees to only see him once a year, every single November 9th, and a set allocation until they meet again. And they don't take each other's numbers, they block each other for everything, so they know nothing about the other person until they catch up again on the November 9th, which sounds like a great premise, honestly. But like, just, it's Colleen Hoover, so she didn't do it right. So that was their first November 9th. She leaves, whatever. They have like this cute, quotation marks in cute, like a moment where they kiss or whatever the hell, and then they don't speak again. And then we get to the second November 9th and they're catching up, blah-de-da-de-da-de-da. And they hook up. I'm going to read to you what she says. My mother is crazy. Why would a girl care to find herself when she'll never be able to make herself feel as good as a guy can? What? A woman will never be able to make herself feel as good as a man can?
Bombastic side-eye. Criminal offensive.
Colleen Hoover definitely told her husband to write this chapter. No woman in her right mind would ever write that sentence. What? In what world? Are we talking about the same men, like the same male species, or is it just like men in fiction? Surely it's just fiction. What? I just hated it. I hated every second of that passage. Anyway, so I'm on the 3rd November 9th, which is when she comes to visit him, and it's his brother's funeral, and she didn't know his brother died until that day. And they sleep together, and before they sleep together, Ben is like, Fallon, I can't do this, like, you need to promise me that we're going to fall in love with each other, and like, I don't want to just only see you once a year until you're 23, and she agrees, and they sleep together, and everything's beautiful, until she goes into the kitchen, and she sees Ben's sister-in-law, whose husband just died, who's pregnant, and realizes how much his sister-in-law needs Ben, like how much she needs that family around him. So Fallon changes her mind. She's like, no, he's not going to come to New York with me. We're not going to do this. He needs to be here to take care of his nephew that's coming. And his sister-in-law, Jocelyn is her name, Jocelyn. So she decides, she's like, no, actually, Ben, like, we're not going to do this. We're going to go. We're going to just go back to the November 9th schedule. You need to be here for your family. And Ben is furious. Ben, like, will not, like, wrap his head around this. He's like, how can you do this to me? How can this? How can that? Just so low-key dramatic. And I didn't like anything of it. And that's where I've stopped. But let me just say so many of the things that I don't enjoy. I don't like Ben's POV. I don't really like Ben as a person. I'm not a very big fan of Fallon either. But it's just Ben. Like, I think the reason I don't like him so much, other than the objective reasons on the book, is because Colleen keeps trying to gaslight me into believing he's funny. She keeps telling me he's funny. She keeps writing on every few pages that Fallon tips her head back in laughter. She keeps trying to tell me he's funny, and he's not funny, and I just need her to stop lying to me because he's not funny, and it's pissing me off. It's pissing me off. He's not funny. Anyway, I forgot to mention that Ben is a writer, and him and Fallon come to a deal that, like, while she's, exploring her life and trying to get auditions to get back into acting, Ben is going to write a book about their love story. So Ben is supposed to be a talented author. Let me read you this poem that Ben wrote. She loved me in quotations. She kissed me in bold. I tried to keep her in all caps. She left me with an ellipsis. ... Now look, there's no such thing as bad poetry, but this is bad poetry. It's giving Gabby Hanna.
Every time I find it, my defense is scream, oh no you don't, whoa.
In the worst possible way, and I didn't think it could get worse than that. It's giving Rupi Kaur and Gabby Hanna got into an argument and wrote about it to each other. Also, one of the cringiest things I've ever read in my entire life, when they're having sex and she's like, how are you going to write about this in your book? He says, I guess I'll just have to fade to black. And then it's an ellipses and it fades to black. This was sickening. It was sickening. It was disgusting. I literally had to write in my book, this was the cringiest thing I've ever read in my entire life. I hated that. Now, look, he's not the worst of Colleen Hoover's male love interests. That's for a fact because he hasn't abused her, But on the topic of abusive Colleen Hoover characters, guess who the fuck makes a cameo in this book? Miles. No! I thought I'd escaped. I thought I'd gotten rid of ugly love in my life permanently. I thought I had closed the book and chucked it, but I hadn't. Miles and Tate just had to come up in this book too. That abusive motherfucker and his dumb wife had to come in and just be there. Just be there, and I hated it. I hate every single second of it, and they brought him in as like the charming guy, the fun little friend. Why are they there? Why are they there? Why would he be there? Why is he there? I thought I'd gotten rid of him. I thought I'd escaped. I thought I was free. I thought I was safe, and I wasn't. It was still a danger zone. He just jumped out at me. Why? Why? Just why? I just don't understand why he needed to be there. Anyway, I'm gonna go force myself through the rest of this book now and let you know my thoughts.
What is wrong with Colleen Hoover as a person? What is... What? Okay, so I just finished this train wreck of a book, right? Let me just... So it's the November immediately after, where Fallon's talking about how she's, you know, she's made peace with the situation and they've got into this fight and la la la, and she left him so that he could take care of his dead brother's sister-in-law and their nephew and their son. I'd much rather believe shit just happens. Injured in a fire? Shit happens. Lost your career? Shit happens. Lost the love of your wife to a widow with an infant? Shit happens. Now this comment is especially funny for reasons I'm about to tell you. So Ben still shows up despite the fact that they ended things on a fight and she left and she didn't know if he was going to show up because of the way that they left things. And he shows up and he comes with his nephew. So he comes with Jocelyn and Kyle's son. And they're talking. And something clicks in her genius brain. And she... Just guess. Ben is fucking his sister-in-law. He's sleeping with his dead brother's wife. The mother of his dead brother's child. His nephew's mother. He's sleeping with her. Now, I want to take this into a broader discussion of Colleen Hoover's issue with infidelity. She has this obsession with, like, justifiable romance between people who should not have like romance between them. It happens in Verity, where she's literally sleeping with the comatose woman's husband. I don't care what you think about that woman. They're married. She's comatose. She's in a vegetative state and you're sleeping with him. And then in Reminders of Him, where she sleeps with her dead boyfriend's best friend and they form their own relationship. Now here, with his dead brother's wife? What? Colleen Hoover, what? And the thing about this book that I will praise more than any other book is at least someone calls it out here. At least Fallon says, you're sleeping with your dead brother's wife. Because, like, genuinely, like, what? Like, what? This is supposed to be, like, a normal thing. Like, Colleen Hoover, what? Anyway, so that happens. So that November 9th literally lasts about half an hour. They get into an argument about it. She gets into her car, which is when he finds out she's moved back to LA. And he's like, how long have you been here? She's like, a month. And he's like, did you move here for me? She's like, I'm not answering that question. You have a child and a woman to go back to. So she gets in her car and she leaves, and that November 9th ends. Next November 9th comes, she still lives in LA. She's going out with her best friend and, you know, she wants to get drunk and she's seeing this guy, which is when Ben shows up to this club and she's like, what the fuck? And Ben is like pretending not to know. He's like, hey, like, guys, I'm doing a survey on couples. Would you mind answering a question? And the guy Fallon's with is like, yeah, sure, like, we'll do it, la, 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 la. And Fallon's like, what the actual hell is going on here? And then she just disappears and she comes out of the toilet and that's when Ben like just bombards her. Worth noting, she's drunk. She's drunk, Ben is sober. And he like corners her and he's like, how serious is it with this guy? And she's like, leave me alone, are you still dating Jocelyn? I actually just realized I don't actually know if her name is Jocelyn. I think it's Jordan. I'm wrong. I think her name is Jordan. Anyway, whatever. And then they go into this cupboard and he's like seducing her and he's getting very sexual with her. She's not sober. I don't care what history you have. If she's not sober, there's no consent. If she is not sober, there is no consent. Stop trying to make it sexy. It's not sexy. Anyway, whatever, they get into this huge fight and then Ben gets into a fight with the guy that she was dating and they get into this whole thing and she goes back home with Ben and they're like, oh my God, like, let's do this, like, let's work together, no more November 9th, like, we're gonna fall in love, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, cool, she forgives him. They sleep together again. She wakes up the next morning and he's still asleep. She's like, oh, la, la, la. She goes into his cupboard to get some clothes, which is when she finds the manuscript of the book he's been writing about her. And she finds this manuscript, she sits in the kitchen, and lo and behold is the real plot twist, which is the fact that he started the fire that just completely just scarred up her entire body, just completely ruined the trajectory of her life, you know, ruined her career, ruined her self-confidence, ruined her chance at relationships, all of that. And he's always known it. So basically, earlier in the book, she describes Ben as a book boyfriend. So that book boyfriend is Joe Goldberg. That book boyfriend is Joe Goldberg, right? Anyway, so she finds this out. She only reads that sentence about the fact that he had like set this fire and that's why like he'd got into a fight with his brother earlier, blah, 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 blah. And she leaves, doesn't speak to him again. And as soon as she leaves, she files a restraining order. That November 9th ends. It's now the final November 9th where she's sat at home and she's wallowing and she's miserable. and she's really, really sad about it, but she's got a restraining order against Ben, so she's not going to see him, and she's just sat at home waiting for her mum to come. And that's when she, at 12 p.m, literally at midnight, the door rings, and then there's no one there. Like, she opens the door, there's no one there. She's terrified. She finds a box at the bottom, and it's got a note from Ben being like, you don't need to speak to me, but I just need to know that you know the full story. I need to know that you don't think I'm just like some crazy guy that was stalking you who set fire to your house, which, I mean, like, that's kind of low-key, like, borderline what you are. She decides she doesn't want to read the manuscript. She goes to bed. She wakes up the next morning. Her mum is here. Her mum is bawling her eyes out because she's now read this manuscript. And she's like, Fallon, you need to read this. I don't care what you think. You need to read this manuscript. And Fallon's like, I don't want to. And she's like, you have to read it. So Fallon reads it, which is when we find out that on November 9th, 2 years before Ben and Fallon meet, Ben's mum shot herself. She killed herself, and Ben at 16 years old was the one to find her. He didn't manage to read her suicide note because he's a 16-year-old boy who just found his mother's dead body. So he calls the police, la-di-da-di-da, and he remembers that she'd just broken up with some guy that she was seeing. So he goes in her contacts to find out who it is, and lo and behold, it's Fallon's dad. So he goes to find Fallon's dad just to be like, what did you do to my mother to make herself kill herself? And he's just watching this man. And he's like staring at him outside of the house, like from his car, and he sees Fallon's dad. He's just like cleaning his car, like this really, really nice car. And someone calls him, and that's when he gets the news that Ben's mum has killed herself. And he's like going through this whole thing. He's punching the air. He's kicking like the gasoline over that he was filling the car up with. And Ben's like, come on, like, care more about my mum than you care about this car. Punch the car. And he doesn't punch the car, and he storms inside the house. And Ben's like, fuck this, you care more about this car than you do about my mum. So Ben goes in. He's a 16-year-old boy. His mum just killed herself. He goes in and he just pours his gasoline all over the car. And he just sets the car on fire and he leaves. And he's like, he feels good. He's like, if you cared more about this car than you did about my mum, well, fuck you. You don't get this car. I lost my mum. You don't get the car. But then he gets home and he sees the news and he realizes that actually the entire house has been caught on fire, and he's like, fuck. So his brother is with him, and his brother turns on the TV and they're watching the news, and they're like, it's just him, it's just Donovan, like Donovan's the only one that got hurt, and he was awake, like he was fine, he got out, and he did. But that's when they find out the helipad was taking out a young 16-year-old girl, and that's when they find out it's the celebrity, la 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 la. So his brother tells him, you're never to speak about this again. You are never to speak about this again. You're going to forget about the situation. She survived. She's fine. Never speak about it again. So he's like, cool, I'm never going to do it. Now, the blame here is not entirely on Ben. He was a 16-year-old child. However, like, this is when you should have told the truth, because immediately after that, 2 years pass. It's his mother's anniversary of death, and he goes to the graveyard, and like, he's just been really, really drunk. He's just been sleeping around his whole life, just getting drunk, getting wasted, just doesn't know how to deal with life without his mother and everything that he experienced. And he goes to visit his mother's grave, and that's when he sees Donovan there, Fallon's father. And he's like, what the fuck? So he just, like, he can't help himself. He follows Donovan in, and that's when he gets to the cafe, which is where he first meets Fallon. So you had 5 years to tell her? You had so much time to tell her you knew who she was? And you didn't. That's the issue. What you did, you were grieving, you were 16 years old, you were traumatized. I don't care about that. All this time? And then it just takes reading that manuscript for Fallon to be like, oh, I forgive you, like, let's fall in love, and they live happily ever after. Which, by the way, is a quote. Ben literally says, spoiler alert, we live happily ever after. Kill me now. I feel like we really need to have a conversation about Colleen Hoover's obsession with, like, really traumatic childhoods and really traumatic backgrounds being justifiable excuses for the way that men behave. Because she did it in Ugly Love, and it ends with us and reminders of him. Your traumatic background as a child is not an excuse to be an asshole as an adult. It's not an excuse. It's just not. And I find it really weird that you can't just write a romance story with regular conflict. But that was November 9th. God help us all.
I don't know, I just don't think this is, like, great for me. I don't want to do it. Like, I can't take the pressure of it. But don't you think any job interview